I'm very pleased to introduce you to Satoshi Yoshida, representante permanente de JICA, el doctor Raúl Fonseca, subdirector de la Escuela de Relaciones Internacionales de la Universidad Nacional, el señor Katsuhide Ariyoshi, el embajador de Japón en Costa Rica, y la doctora Ayako Kusunoki, Professor of the International Research Center for Japanese Studies. Today's lecture will be Japan's Security Doctrine and Foreign Policy. I'm going to do Spanglish because Professor Ayako doesn't speak Spanish, but to all of you, I'm going to do it English and Spanish. Estimados representantes de la Escuela de Relaciones Internacionales de la UNA, doctora María Fernanda, estimados colegas, compañeros representantes de JICA y de la Embajada de Japón en Costa Rica. Para nosotros es un gusto que nos acompañen hoy presencial y virtualmente para recibirlos en la Academia Diplomática Manuel María de Peralta en este conversatorio que nos va a acompañar la doctora Kusunoki. Quiero agradecer a la Universidad Nacional por siempre brindar colaboración académica con la academia y en estos conversatorios tan interesantes de temas tan actuales. Le doy la palabra al señor Satoshi Yoshida, representante permanente de JICA.
Excelentísimo señor Ariyoshi Katsuhide, embajador de Japón en Costa Rica, embajadora María Isabel Sanabria Castro, directora de la Academia Diplomática, doctora Kusunoki Ayako, profesor del International Research Center for Japanese Studies, Nichibunken, doctor Raúl Fonseca Hernández, subdirector de la Escuela de Relaciones Internacionales de la Universidad Nacional. Estimadas personas funcionarias del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores y Culto, muy buenos días tengan ustedes. Mi nombre es Satoshi Yoshida, soy el representante residente de la Agencia de Cooperación Internacional de Japón, oficina de JICA en Costa Rica. Primero, quisiera expresar mi más sincero agradecimiento por organización de esta conferencia. Ha sido un esfuerzo muy valioso por parte de las personas académicas de la Escuela de Relaciones Internacionales de la Universidad Nacional y la Oficina de Asuntos Internacionales en conjunto con JICA, para hacer realidad la visita de la doctora Kusunoki al país para brindar una serie de conferencias como parte del fortalecimiento al programa de la cátedra JICA. Y desde luego, queremos agradecer a la doctora Kusunoki por su disposición y interés de venir a Costa Rica a compartir sus experiencias y valiosos conocimientos. También quisiera manifestar mi profundo agradecimiento a la Academia Diplomática de este honorable ministerio por abrirnos las puertas de este prestigioso salón para llevar a cabo la presente conferencia. Nos sentimos muy honrados de estar presentes de este lugar. Consideramos que estas conferencias llegan a formar parte de los esfuerzos para promover el programa de apoyo al establecimiento de estudios de Japón llamado Cátedra JICA, el cual es organizado e impulsado por JICA en conjunto con universidades en todo el mundo, como es el caso de la Universidad Nacional y la Universidad de Costa Rica en este país. En el caso de la UNA, desde el año 2022, estamos trabajando juntos para promover la cátedra JICA. El programa de cátedra JICA se crea con el propósito de ampliar y promover aún más el estudio y investigación sobre las experiencias de desarrollo de Japón en diferentes campos. Como es el caso de esta conferencia, Y vale la pena mencionar también que dentro del programa de estudios de la Universidad Nacional hay un curso con créditos sobre Japón llamado Japón Contemporáneo. También quisiéramos recalcar que este año la Agencia de Cooperación Internacional de Japón cumple 50 años de cooperación entre el gobierno de Costa Rica y el gobierno de Japón. Ha sido medio siglo de esta cooperación en Costa Rica y dichosamente este honorable ministro ha formado parte de esta historia. A lo largo de estos 50 años se han estrechado fuertemente los lazos de amistad y de confianza entre ambos países. Esperamos seguir compartiendo esos espacios de intercambio académico y colaborando desde las diferentes modalidades de cooperación. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, señor Yatoshi. Procedemos con el doctor Raúl Fonseca, subdirector de la Escuela de Relaciones Internacionales de la Universidad Nacional.
Muchas gracias. Un gusto estar compartiendo con todos ustedes. Un saludo muy especial al personal diplomático que nos acompaña hoy, este día, en esta sala, a la audiencia que está de manera presencial, nos acompaña también de manera remota, al representante residente de JICA en Costa Rica, Satoshi Yoshida, a la doctora Ayako Kusunoki, profesora del Instituto de Investigación para los Estudios de Japón, a la embajadora excelentísima María Isabel Sanabrio Castro. Ya tenemos mucho tiempo de estar colaborando entre la UNA y el Instituto Diplomático, que es la directora actualmente del Instituto Diplomático, y al embajador, excelentísimo señor Ariyoshi Katsuri, embajador del Japón en Costa Rica. Un gusto saludarles. Quisiera iniciar estas palabras reiterando la bienvenida a la profesora a Costa Rica, que si bien es la primera vez que nos acompaña de forma presencial, ya había colaborado de manera virtual en otras estancias que ha estado. Esperamos que la visita sea lo más placentera posible. Asimismo, un agradecimiento sincero a JICA Costa Rica por todo el apoyo y el trabajo conjunto que hemos desarrollado a lo largo de los años y en particular, como se refería el representante de JICA en Costa Rica, por la actividad o la cátedra JICA que nosotros tenemos en la Universidad Nacional, que se ha hecho durante el año anterior y este año, el cual ha generado múltiples actividades, cursos que están ya escolarizados dentro de la malla curricular, un curso optativo tanto para la carrera de Relaciones Internacionales como para cualquier otra carrera de la universidad que quiera llevar este tipo de contenido y conocer más a Japón, acercarse a la cultura, la economía, además. En este marco se han organizado diversas actividades, conferencias donde han participado el señor embajador y otras personas tanto de la embajada como de JICA. De la misma forma, nuestra gratitud a la Academia Diplomática, el Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores, con quien hemos cultivado una relación larga de amistad, que siempre hemos trabajado en conjunto para organizar estas y otras actividades desde la dirección de don Carlos Cascante, profesor que nos acompaña también hoy en esta sala, y hasta la actualidad y con diversas otras direcciones que han pasado por la escuela. La cátedra JICA 1 está escrita a la Escuela de Relaciones Internacionales, ha venido trabajando sistemáticamente en la organización de actividades de reflexión y difusión de los estudios del Japón, esto con una aproximación internacional y la sensibilización del caso hacia el hermano país. De esta manera, hemos organizado conferencias, charlas, hasta la estructuración del curso que les comentaba, entre otras actividades, tan diversas, en donde han analizado el componente político, internacional, educación para la paz, la cultura, los negocios y la política exterior. En este contexto se enmarca esta conferencia titulada Japan Security Doctrine and Foreign Politics. A pesar de que es la primera visita de la profesora, ya nos había acompañado en otras actividades. La doctora es una reconocida experta en temas vinculados con los estudios de la seguridad, la historia diplomática y la política en Japón. Y en este espacio nos va a compartir indudables datos y aspectos interesantes sobre Japón. Desde un ejercicio académico, reflexiona sobre los aspectos que pueden incidir en la política exterior de Japón y su rol en el escenario global. Para un país como Costa Rica, que se ha insertado en escena internacional en temas de la promoción de la salud, el desarme, los derechos humanos, aprender de estas experiencias de este estado hermano como Japón es muy importante. A pesar de que nos separan distancias geográficas importantes y que a nivel cultural existen diferencias, el sentido de humanidad y visiones comunes sobre temas de paz y desarrollo humano nos acercan significativamente. De esta forma, reiterar el compromiso de la Escuela de Relaciones Internacionales de la Universidad Nacional para crear espacios académicos de difusión de ideas con el afán de acercar a los pueblos hermanos y a las instituciones. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias al doctor Fonseca y le damos la palabra al excelentísimo embajador Katsudi Ariyoshi.
Gracias. Bueno, directora de la Academia Diplomática de Embajadora María Isabel Sanabria y subdirector de la Escuela de Relaciones Internacionales de Universidad Nacional, doctor Raúl Fonseca Hernández. Y también, bueno, representante residente de JICA, señor Yoshida Satoshi, y profesora hoy día como un guest, doctora Kusunoki, Ayako-san. Y todos ustedes hoy día están acá y todos ustedes están más allá de la cámara. Muy, muy buenos días. Bueno, embajador es como un trabajo un poco duro, que, sí, bueno, solamente 24 horas antes estaba acá en este edificio, Salón Dorado, ayer como una condecoración a la presidente Chávez de parte del gobierno de Ucrania. Y algunas calas yo vi, entonces, y 24 horas después, ahora, viendo. Sí. Pero es como de, bueno, Ucrania, la situación de allá, es como una cosa una señal de la importancia del estudio de la seguridad del país. Y hoy día, digo, que geográficamente o en la historia, bueno, Costa Rica y Japón están muy, muy distintos. Su posición, sus vecinos, su historia desde más allá hasta hoy día. Entonces, eso sería muy estimulante. Las palabras de la doctora Kusunoki para ustedes sería muy, muy interesante. Estoy seguro. Y por favor, entienda bien o entienda correctamente la diferencia. No quería decir la diferencia, pero cada país tiene su propia posición, propia historia, propia cultura. Y hoy día sería muy buena oportunidad para todos ustedes que conozcan Japón. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, embajador. Bueno, de nuevo darle la bienvenida a la doctora Kusunoki, que es profesora de la International Research Center for Japanese Studies. Bienvenida, doctora.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to such a beautiful place. I arrived here 2 days ago, and I'm enjoying this beautiful weather and beautiful mountains very much. And well, today I would like to talk about the Japan's security and foreign and security policy. And first of all, I'd like to introduce the institution I'm working for. Would you please next? Yes, International Research Center for Japanese Studies. And it is located in Kyoto, one of the old cities in Japan. And it's the temples and the beautiful bamboo forests, something like that, is very famous for. And the picture in the center is our library, of which I'm most proud of. We are collecting all kinds of Japanese books, either in Japanese and in other languages, including Spanish. So I believe there are some books on Japanese culture or Japanese history, religion, intellectual history in Spanish in our libraries. So I study Japanese modern history, and in particular Japanese foreign policy and security policy and political history. So today I like to overview Japan's foreign policy for about 70 years since the Asia-Pacific War. Mainly focusing on the concept of security and Japan's approaches to international community. Please, next. Yeah, thank you. So first of all, the Japanese foreign policies have some kind of principle that that guided and after the defeat of the Asia-Pacific War. And this is a picture of this photo is of the San Francisco Peace Conference in September 1951. And you see the Prime Minister, then Prime Minister Yoshida signed in the peace agreement with Japan, between Japan and the allied nations. And Costa Rica was one of the 49 signatory countries of the peace treaty with Japan. And Japan and Costa Rica restored diplomatic relations next year in 1952. And I believe some kind of documents on this restoring diplomatic relations are stored in that room, I guess. But yeah, I couldn't find before. But yeah, I believe and I hope you introduce the guests to the documents of these relationships. So the principles I like to talk on 3 principles of the Yoshida Doctrine. 3 core principles is such as the slide. First of all, first one is to entrust most of Japan's security to the United States. So Japan and the United States have a security treaty concluded in 1951 along with the peace treaty. And based on such security treaty, Japan has a strong cooperation with United States with regard to security. And secondly, minimizing Japan's own defense efforts. Japan has its own military. We don't call officially it's a military, but yeah, in reality it's a military, self-defense forces. But yeah, it's relatively a small-scale military. That's the second principle. And the third one is that the dedicating Japan's resources to economic development. So these principles are originated in Prime Minister Yoshida Shigeru's decision in 1950 to 1951. And so that's why the Yoshida doctrine is so-called the principles reflected principles reflected decisions made by Prime Minister Yoshida Shigeru. His main decisions are first one is that Japan should have security arrangement with the United States and providing military bases to the United States. And secondly, but the most unique point was that the Yoshida decided to build Japan's military forces only incrementally and small scale, just for self-defense. So these decisions eventually formed the framework for subsequent Japanese foreign policy. So that's why we called Japanese foreign policy after the Asia-Pacific War was guided by the Yoshida doctrine. So, but it is important to consider the international and domestic conditions that both Yoshida's decisions and subsequent Japanese foreign policy were formulated. With regard to international order, the Cold War definitely defined Japan's foreign and security policy. In addition to US-Soviet confrontation, US-China confrontation characterized the Cold War in Asia. And also liberal international order that the United States and the United Kingdom mainly established was important for Japan. Actually worked in Japan's favor. The United Nations collective security as well as free trade regime was also very important for Japan. But for the Japanese public, the Japanese government had to deal with two requirements. The first one was a peace constitution. Is that? Would you please next one? Yes, this is our Japanese constitution, particularly Article 9 stipulates that Japan should renounce war as to settle international disputes. This Article 9 works as kind of a norm of behavior of Japanese foreign policy. And also, could you please return the first one? Return to the previous one. Thank you. Thank you. And also, for many Japanese people, economic survival and development was very important because during the war, Japan's economic basis was many of Japanese economic basic structure was destroyed by the war. So the economic survival and development is very important for Japanese people. Okay, you should. Okay, so please next one and next. Yes, thank you. But it is able to understand that the Yoshida doctrine shaped Japan's foreign and security policy only until the early 1970s. The 1964 Tokyo Olympic Games and the Osaka Expo in 1970. This picture is the Osaka Expo in 1970. Those two international events were symbols of Japan's reconstruction after the war and economic development. And after the Osaka Expo, Japan's turned to a different stage. Japanese foreign policy turned in the different stage. And the changes in Japanese foreign and security policy was undoubtedly caused by Japan's rapid economic growth. Could you please turn the next? The next one, thank you. Yeah, this, sorry, it is many of Japanese, but yeah, you can see the graphs. The economic growth rate was approximately 10% per year during 1990, the late 1950s and 1973. About 15 years, the economic growth rate was approximately 10% per year, and the GNP quadrupled during this period. So by the late 1960s, Japan has become the second largest economic power in the West, next to the United States. So the problem is that in what way Japan used this economic power? Economic growth affected Japan's foreign policy in many ways. And first, Japan became able to utilize economic power as diplomatic sources. It gave to Japan more opportunities to pursue economic profit, as well as expand opportunities for Japan to achieve its diplomatic goals. But as Japan's economic grew, expectations and concerns about Japan arose in the international community. Some concerns is the expectation is like Japan could expand its economic assistance to the developing world. And also, mainly the United States expected that Japan should more commit to the international economic order, to maintain the international economic order and assisting the United States. But on the other hand, there are some concerns on Japan because that Japan could use its economic power for building much bigger military power, and Japan could revive the international community could see the revival of Japan as a military power in short term. So there were both expectations and concerns in the international community in the late 1960s. But the important is the very important thing is that the Japanese leaders' decision in the late 1960s and early 70s, the LDP, Liberal Democratic Party's leaders made very significant decisions. Many of LDP leaders became aware the responsibility for the international order as an economic power, Japan's responsibility for the international order as an economic power. They began to think about how to contribute to international peace and stability, and rather turning this economic might to developing military power, they tried to use its economic power for more international peace and stability and international peace and stability. And at the same time, they considered, the LDP leaders considered it necessary to expand cooperation for international peace and stability through mainly economic measures. So we could see that, yes, this is the Japanese ODA. You can see that Japan's economic cooperation from the 1956 to early 2000s. Japan's economic cooperation started with reparation for Southeast Asian countries in the 1950s and very low level. But from the late 1970s, Japan expanded its ODA, during which Japan started ODA to Costa Rica, I believe. And Japanese economic cooperation is very significant, not only in terms of rectifying global inequality in the 1960s. Also, the purpose of economic cooperation with countries such as South Korea and Thailand is to support conflict zones or areas bordering on communist countries. And Japan's assistance to China was important because in the late 1970s and early 80s, China had embarked on reforms and open door policies and Japan's large-end loans to China were positioned as a means of drawing the country closer to the West at the time during the 1980s. Anyway, Japan uses its economic power to assist mainly developing countries for their stability and economic development. So could you please return the previous one? Yes. And meanwhile, LDP leaders, in particular Sato Eisaku, who is the photo of this slide, was the most important figures in terms of making Japan's security policy for the longer term. He is first Nobel Peace Prize winner of Japan, and after he mainly in the reason was his decision to announce the 3 non-nuclear principles. And along with the 3 non-nuclear principles, his decision was important because, first of all, he decided that Japan should maintain the US-Japan Security Treaty and keep cooperating for regional peace and security through military bases in Japan. So Japan indirectly supported regional peace and security through military bases in Japan, which were based on which the US forces could be deployed to all parts of Asia. And also he decided to expand Japan's self-defense forces very incrementally, only incrementally, I believe. So which means that Japan uses its economic power not for military power, only keep the low-level self-defense forces. And include Sato and other LDP leaders believed that Japan should not be a military power, but live as a peaceful country, peace-loving country. And as economic power, Japan should assist and support the international community through non-military or economic means, and contribute to international peace and stability and prosperity. So the decisions, a series of decisions are very important to set Japan's foreign and security policy after the 1970s and after the 1970s through today. So would you please next? Yes, thank you. And since 1990s, the participation of Japan's self-defense forces in minesweeping operations, PKO, or international disaster relief activities has been an important component of the non-military cooperation of the for international peace and stability. Until the 1990s, Japanese self-defense forces couldn't go overseas, and the only means of contribution for Japan is the economic assistance. But after 1990, since the 1990s, self-defense forces played a significant role in Japan's cooperation, international cooperation for the peace and stability. And yes, okay, so. But this trend, so such a kind of updated version of the Yoshida Doctrine, the Yoshida Doctrine was not changed during the Cold War. Japan remained depending on the United States in its security, and Japan's self-defense forces is very low level. But the Japan's economic power is became used as a tool for international community since around the 1970s. So this is a kind of updated version of the Yoshida Doctrine. But since the 2000, transformations comes. Okay, so please next one. Yes, thank you. So since 1990s, after the Cold War, Japan's foreign and security policy became slowly changed. So I'd like to first mention that the regional security environments in the post-Cold War period. So there are the remnants of divisions created by the Cold War in Asia-Pacific region. And first one was the Korean Peninsula, and second one is a Taiwan, China-Taiwan relations. So those the kind of unstable factors are very close to Japan. So these points significantly affected Japan's security environments. So in this sense, the end of the Cold War did not arrive as clearly in the Asia-Pacific region as it did in Europe. And also China's rapid economic development and military modernization began to influence on regional order. Thank you. So in the post-Cold War period, the Asia-Pacific region's security structure has consisted of about 3 layers. One first level is hub and spoke system, which is the parallel structure of individual bilateral alliances that the United States had with Western countries in the region, including Japan and also Australia, South Korea, the Philippines, and the West countries in the region. And second level is region-wide frameworks, the overarching and encompassing the whole region, and targeting for peace and stability in the region. The example is the APEC, the ASEAN Regional Forum, East Asian Summit, or ASEAN +3 meetings. Such region-wide frameworks are working. So, but between these two levels, the very individual bilateral alliances and the encompassing the comprehensive security cooperation system, between these systems, the two forms of cooperative security frameworks. The third form of cooperation is the kind of networking of capabilities or capacity building, or the establishment of dialogues to ensure security. So this is relatively issue-based cooperation. For example, the six-party talks on the nuclear issues in Korean Peninsula, or military exercises among the various countries, or disaster relief cooperation is this level. So these three layers consist as a whole. The has been supporting the security structure in the Asia Pacific region, and this structure emerged in around the 2000s. And based on this structure, the distribution of power as a fundamental component, obviously, but consisting of alliances, ad hoc functional cooperation, and region-wide cooperation, which as a whole facilitated the resolution of regional issues and the achievement of various security objectives. Among these various forms, thank you, the United States and Japan emphasized the importance of the alliance. And since around 1990s, mid-1990s, the United States and Japan began to deepen and expand their alliances in many ways. Mainly, this is in order to deal with regional instabilities, the China-Taiwan relations, and China and the Korean Peninsula. So both countries decided to maintain their bilateral alliance for regional security. And so but so this post-Cold War security environment was an important factor for both countries to maintain the alliance after the Cold War. But I should mention that the other factors that promoted to the continuation of the alliance. First one was already formal and informal institutions, rules, and customs centered around U.S.-Japan Security Treaty. So the bilateral alliance between Japan and the United States was highly institutionalized since the 1950s, and on which was based on the management of bilateral security relationships, as well as U.S.-Japan relations as a whole. And also the important was that the both countries developed defense cooperation between the self-defense forces and the US forces since around the 1980s, in order to deal with the Soviet expansion into the Pacific Ocean. So these factors also should be considered to understand the continuation of the US-Japan alliance after the Cold War. And the intention of both governments was indicated, the joint declaration. So would you please turn the next slide? The joint declaration between President Clinton and Prime Minister Hashimoto, which was about 25 years ago, 25 or 6 years ago. And this is a joint declaration on the US-Japan alliance for the 21st century. Both President and the Prime Minister announced that both countries maintain a stable and prosperous environment for the Asia-Pacific region. And to that end, the security relationships between both countries was very important. And also the United States should keep 100,000 level of military in the Asia-Pacific region. So the Japan-US Joint Declaration for Security in 1996, and after that, US-Japan developed its security defense cooperations through the guidelines or the several legislation for Japanese society and politics. So around 1997, late 1990s and the early 2000s, US-Japan relation, the security relationship has developed as the alliance for regional security. And then after the 2000, both governments decided to improve more the alliance, not only the regional security, but also for global security. So this is also a joint effort to improve the alliance. So President Bush and Prime Minister Koizumi declared that the Japan-US alliance for the new century, and it is they said that it is these common values and common interests that form the basis for US-Japan regional and global cooperation. So it indicated this announcement. Since around this time, both governments began to emphasize that this bilateral alliance was based on common values and interests, and the alliance itself was began to function as a global security. So why was it necessary for both countries? Obviously, it is during the period of global war on terror. So Japanese government, not only the United States, but also Japanese government had to respond to the global terrorism by expanding the alliance with the United States. And also North Korea's nuclear and missile development has progressing significantly. And the rise of China as an economic as well as a military power was starting to pose a threat to Japan's security. So these the international environments promoted the enhancement of Japanese US-Japan alliance, and the strengthening the linkage between the US military bases in Japan and the US global military strategy was very remarkable the character during this period. So in addition, the self-defense forces began to expand its activities beyond the border to contribute to global peace and security through cooperation in the fight against terrorism. So SDF went to the Indian Ocean for whaling on to Iraq to support the transportation and the reconstruction of that country. And this trend continues through 2000 to 2010s, and the legislation for peace and security in 2015 was part of the development of a legal system that responds to the globalization of alliances, and also is one of the milestones achieved in this period, or since 2000. And I like to mention that the more recent developments since the 2010s, but about up to the late since the late 2000, and Japan tries to expand security cooperations with countries other than the United States. And in parallel with the deepening and broadening of the US-Japan alliances, Japan began to emphasize solidarity with countries that shared universal values, mainly in the face of China's maritime expansion into the South China Sea and also East China Sea. And Australia is the most important country since around late 2000s, and India as well, and also the Philippines, and probably South Korea. And the relationship with South Korea is dependent on who is the president of the South Korea, but the South Korea is also the partner or alliance of the United States, like Japan. So the relationship and also the military bases in Japan is very important for the Korean Peninsula, the security of the Korean Peninsula. So the security relationships between South Korea and Japan was very important. And also, there are some efforts that the Japanese government began to make to promote a rule-based order. And in that trend, Japan tried to support for capacity building of the Southeast Asian countries, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and mine and clearance, and maritime security, PKO, something like that. And the Japanese government began to promote rule-based order in addition to a strengthened U.S.-Japan alliance. So, so the most recent developments was like there are definitely bilateral alliances with the United States. The hub-and-spoke system still important for regional security, but establishing security cooperation with among other countries, including United States or excluding United States, there are several kind of security cooperation in the region has been emerging around up to 2010s. There are 4 types of security cooperations. First one was the networking the alliances of the alliance. So the bilateral relationships between spokes, which means that the Australia and Japan and South Korea, Japan and the Philippines, such kind of the bilateral relationships between the U.S. partners is emerging. And also a trilateral cooperation, including the U.S., like U.S., Japan, Australia, the U.S., Japan, Philippines, such kind of trilateral cooperation also is functioning. And secondly, bilateral, trilateral, or quadrilateral cooperation between the U.S. and its allied countries. And India or the ASEAN countries should be noticeable. The most famous one was the Quad, the Australia, the United States, the Japan, and India. The picture was the Quad, the Prime Minister's President's meeting, probably this year. And Quad has become more institutionalized in terms of periodical high-level talks, including summit meetings that like those pictures. And the third one is more involvement. Third one is related to European countries, which became very interested in Indo-Pacific areas in terms of security. And the 2+2 started between Japan and some European countries like the United Kingdom or Germany or France the 2+2 has just started. And the fourth one was functional cooperation is very important in the field of humanitarian assistance or disaster relief, and capacity building for maritime security or the cyber security. It is this kind of functional or issue-based cooperations can't be ignored. So these four forms or four types of cooperation, security cooperation, which many countries join or joining in various ways, as a whole, uphold the security environment in the Asia-Pacific region or in the Pacific region recently. Okay, so Dia, please, next one, and also next one, please. I'll skip this slide. And so this is a very flexible and multipolar, multi-layered security framework in this region. In Asia-Pacific region, or recently Indo-Pacific region is more common used. And it supplements the hub-and-spoke system. And also it satisfies a variety of security requirements for each countries. And also the character, it's open-ended framework, so the many countries can join or can decide to join or not to join. So it is very open-ended frameworks. It's obviously not NATO type, very strict and solid security, collective security system, but the more flexible and multipolar system. And I think it is more suitable to the Indo-Pacific region. So it connects countries. In this region, the relationships among the countries, regional countries, are not necessarily stable. There are hostilities between some countries, and relationships are very different. So these types of cooperation is more suitable. And also, the China is obviously a most biggest problem, but many countries do not try to contain China. And it is posing a threat, but containing China is not very not very possible, but not very wise either. So the region as a whole needs the framework not to contain China, but in some cases, the framework to make the China to join in and to build a cooperative relationship with China is necessary. So this kind of security system is compatible with the independent relationships with China of the many countries. So these various security framework is a part of or the yes is a different aspect of the free and open Indo-Pacific policy that invented and implemented by the Abe cabinet. So the Prime Minister Abe well, how can I say, a free and open Indo-Pacific policy was invented and implemented by the Abe cabinet since around the 2010, 2012 or 2013. And it was a very grand design of the regional order, it tried to connect two continents, the Indian continents and the African continents, and two oceans, the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. And it's aspiring to build a regional order with universal values as its bond. And it tries to support the comprehensive, but in practice, Japan aims to support comprehensive development of infrastructure, trade and investment, business environment, and human resources, and political and governance in African countries. But these very grand design is Japan's foreign policies, how can I say it, the achievement or the one of the idea that presented to the world. And it is a different aspect of the security system that I mentioned before, which was a multi-level layered security system. So the recent developments is, do I have time or? Okay, thank you very much. 10 more minutes, okay, thank you. So the more recent developments, yes, the next one, please. Yes, the recent developments is National Security Strategy of Japan 2022 is very noticeable. This is the second national security strategy that Japan had, and it states that it announces that the Japan should fundamentally reinforce Japan's defense capabilities. And also, Japan is setting a target to increase defense budget to 2% of GNP by fiscal year 2027. And could you please turn to the next one? Yeah, this is a defense budget of the Japanese government. You can see the trend around between around 2000s, between 2000 and the 2010s, defense budget is slightly decreasing, the middle of the graph. But after 2010s, 2012, I guess, 2013, after Prime Minister Abe back to power, defense budget is going to increase. But the defense spending since 2013 to from 2013 to 2020 was about around 50 billion yen per year. But this time, after 2020s, 1.4 trillion yen increase was decided by the Kishida cabinet. Could you please return the previous one? Yeah, thank you. And also, Japan should possess the counter-strike capabilities. And lastly, Japan should reinforce comprehensive defense architecture. Those kind of security decisions significantly transformed Japan's diplomatic and foreign security policy. And yes, could you please turn the next one, and also next. I have no time to elaborate this slide, but the basic idea is to utilize. Basic idea is that the Japanese government try to utilize defense capabilities as well as comprehensive national power, and to mobilize various resources, primarily for national defense. So the all kind of the industries or the infrastructure or non-military purposes, the productions are could be mobilized for national defense. That is the decision, one of the decisions that the national security strategy in 2022. And besides, more interesting to me is that the National Security Strategy 2022 reveals that Japan's intention to create a new balance. This is a very great leap from the past documents, which only mentioned that Japan would not become a power vacuum or create security environment desirable for Japan. But these documents and also the Prime Minister Kishida mentioned that Japan creates a new balance in the region. And what a new balance means and how it could be achieved was not necessarily clear, but fundamental ideas about the role of military forces seem to have changed in Japanese foreign policy. And for example, the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Kishida said in his inaugural speech that what we must prioritize first and foremost is developing proactive diplomacy. At the same time, diplomacy needs to be backed by defense capabilities. So it is unusual because prime ministers in the post-war period usually stressed that Japan would pursue to be a non-military power to achieve diplomatic purposes, using mainly economic resources and develop military forces to the minimum necessary for self-defense. But the Prime Minister Kishida said diplomacy needs to be backed by defense capabilities. So there are significant gap between the Prime Minister, what Prime Minister Kishida tries to say, and the traditional Japanese post-war foreign policy. At the same time, he stressed that Japan as a peaceful country like his predecessors. So this is a kind of confusing message to the world. On the one hand, Japan keeps to be a peaceful country, but on the other, Japan tries to create a new balance in the region, and Japanese diplomacy needs to be backed by defense capabilities. So I would like to hear your impression that these kind of confusing messages. So, so why these developments happened? Obviously, it is the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is very huge. It gives lessons for Japan that what made Russia decide to launch the attack. So partly Russia's invasion to Ukraine is moved Japanese defense and security policy. Many people said that what happened to Ukraine today could be led to Taiwan tomorrow. This is kind of theory that was very convincing among political leaders, which directly jumped up important to decisions on the defense budget and the counterattack capabilities. But both decisions are not very new. This is as a result of the long-term trend. China factor continued to pose a threat to a kind of threat to Japan since the 2000s, and North Korea is also a very serious problem for us. And the United States is losing its intention to commit to the international order by militarily or by economically, probably. And US factor is also important for Japanese security environment. So, now recently, the new Prime Minister Ishiba said and he also published his article in the U.S. periodicals that the Asian NATO is necessary for the regional security. And this is also giving a confusing message to the United States and also in Japan and also the region probably. And the why Asian NATO is not emerged was as I explained before, but the Asian NATO type regional security system will be established or not be established. There are some kind of possibility, but the security system or security structure or security architecture in the Asia-Pacific region or Indo-Pacific region is also still very fluctuated and very flexible, but very going has some possibilities. It's going many ways. So it depends mainly on the China and the United States, but Japan's decisions trying to the influence on the regional balance of power by through the encompassing the whole region, Indo-Pacific region, and try to establish a rule-based order that can encompass the whole regional countries. So if I have time, I like to mention these two pictures, but I like to stop here, and I like to hear your the comments and the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kusunoki. It was a very interesting lecture regarding the process, the development of Japan's security doctrines and the different allies that you just explained. So thank you very much. I don't know if someone have some question, comment to Dr. Kusunoki. Yes, Jimena.
Thank you, Dr. Kusunoki, for this fascinating presentation. If I understood correctly, so Japan's security doctrine is very much a product of World War II and basically committed itself to having only peaceful or defensive forces. And yet somehow reality has crept in and this definition of defensive forces has had to change, basically. My question now is regards the specific article on your constitution that bans aggressive use of military power. If I remember correctly, during, I think, one of the governments of Prime Minister Abe, there was a very serious discussion about changing the constitution. So basically, I would be quite interested to know what happened to these discussions. Is this still something that is a political program or has it been abandoned? And then I have a much smaller question that has to do with military exercises in the region and whether the current definition of forces for defense purposes includes participation in military exercises with allies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. With regard to the revision of the Japanese constitution, yes, Prime Minister Abe was eager to revise the constitution that was created by the United States. So he is one of the yes, his lifetime, the passion was to revise the constitution, but he was he was also a very practical political leader. So he's I'm not sure what he tried to do exactly or precisely, but the legislation for peace and security in 2015 is one of his answer to the constitutional issues. The revision of the constitution is needs a very long process and a very there are many hurdles to revise the constitution, and but the security environments is more the essential and needs a prompt response to the environment. So the legislation for peace and security includes that the Japan is able to use the right of the collective defense, collective defense, security defense, collective defense rights, as the United Nations Charter stipulated. So previously, the Japanese government says that the Japan has a right to use Japan has a right to use Japan is able to use the right of collective self-defense, but politically it is and constitutionally it is not able to use that right. But the Abe administration changed the kind of interpretation. Not constitutional interpretation, but announced that the Japan has the right and also is able to use this right in limited sphere. So the in this so legislation for peace and security is kind of the replacement of the constitutional revision. So secondly, you're talking about the military exercises among the Japanese and other countries, allies. Yes, since the 1970s, maritime self-defense forces begin the exercises, joint exercises with the United States and United States allies, and it expands slowly, and the ground self-defense forces and also air defense forces began to military exercise with other, and mainly with the United States. But recently, the very multilateral joint military exercises is very important for regional security, including India or the Philippines or those countries.